My parents chose my brother's award over visiting me after a car crash. Now they want my savings to bail him out of a fraud scandal I refused about 2 weeks ago. 32 weeks ago. 32 week was involved in a horrific car accident. Another vehicle struck me from the side while I was on my way home from work, and the force of the impact caused my car to overturn. The paramedics later told me I was lucky to be alive. I required emergency surgery due to internal bleeding, 2 cracked ribs, and a damaged leg. After the procedure, I remained in the hospital for a week to recover and process everything. Being in the hospital was incredibly difficult, both physically and mentally. All I wanted was for my parents to come see me. When I first woke up, I assumed they would rush over as soon as they heard what happened. I didn't expect them to stay the entire time, but even a brief visit would have meant everything to me. Instead, they were absent for days. I kept waiting for them to visit, or at least call, but they didn't show up. In fact, it took 4 days before I even received a text from them. The hospital had contacted them multiple times, as they are listed as my emergency contacts. By the day after I was admitted, the hospital had managed to reach them, but the nurses told me they seemed unconcerned about the situation. That upset me deeply, but I tried to rationalize it, telling myself they might be busy or dealing with something else. Fortunately, my phone had survived the crash, so I still had it with me. Every 5 to 6 hours, I texted my parents, but I never received a response. Each day in the hospital felt like a nightmare. I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt because I desperately wanted to see familiar faces, but with each passing hour, it became harder. Thankfully, I wasn't completely alone. Some of my friends who live in other states reached out to family acquaintances nearby, and one of them came to visit me on the 6th day. During the visit, they casually mentioned how wonderful it was that my brother was being recognized at an award ceremony. I had no idea what they were talking about, and they seemed confused that I didn't know. They explained that my parents hadn't come to see me because they were attending my brother's ceremony. They knew I was in the hospital, yet instead of being there for me during such a critical time, they chose to attend his event. They were so focused on preparing for his big moment that they delayed even contacting me. They were more concerned about his recognition than my condition. To be clear, this isn't about jealousy. I understand why they're proud of him. He's talented and has worked hard for his success. He's always been the golden child, which is exactly the issue. Ever since we were kids, he's been praised for everything, while I've largely been overlooked. He now works for a major company and is very successful, so I understand that the award meant a lot to him. But I was recovering from surgery. A visit or even a simple phone call would have been the bare minimum. All I wanted was for my parents to care about me. That was it. They didn't even seem concerned that I could have died. I felt angry and humiliated. I couldn't make sense of their behavior. Eventually, I decided to confront them. I texted them, expressing how hurt I was that they had prioritized my brother's award over my well-being, and how painful it was that they hadn't even checked on me. This time, they responded quickly, for the first time since the accident. And honestly, I wish they hadn't. At first, they tried to justify themselves, saying they couldn't miss my brother's award because it was a once-in-a-lifetime achievement. I pointed out that if they had visited me earlier, they wouldn't have had to miss anything at all. Eventually, they stopped arguing and told me it would have been pointless to come see me while my brother was out there making the family proud. That hurt more than I can put into words. It felt like I didn't matter to them at all, like I was nothing more than an afterthought. I wish I could say their behavior surprised me, but it didn't. It has always been this way. My brother was perfect in their eyes. Everything he did was praised, every achievement celebrated. Whether it was a scholarship, a prestigious job, or perfect grades, everything he achieved was celebrated. Meanwhile, I remained in the background. Nothing I did was ever good enough. Even when I succeeded, every mistake I made was treated like a disaster, and I never received the same level of support. I had the impression they had already decided I was a failure, and nothing I did would ever change their minds. A week after my brother's award ceremony, my parents unexpectedly showed up at the hospital. I was confused because after our last conversation, I had given up on reaching out to them. I knew my parents well enough to understand they weren't there out of concern. When they arrived, they wore fake smiles and carried a bouquet. They tried to make small talk about how I was doing, but it was obvious their minds were elsewhere. I told them to just say what was on their minds, because I could tell whatever it was would irritate me. Their lack of concern for my survival was already offensive enough. I didn't need their fake sympathy. It didn't take much prompting. When my mother told me that my brother had been arrested for fraud at his company, she broke down in tears. It turned out my brother was at the center of a major fraud scheme, uncovered by the company he worked for. He had been diverting funds into his personal investments by falsifying company accounts. After an internal investigation, everything was handed over to the police, and he was arrested after a coworker reported it to management. He is now facing serious charges, including wire fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. My parents had already spent a significant portion of their savings on hiring lawyers for him. They came to me because they didn't have enough money left to cover his bail. They asked me to use the money I had saved from my job as a project manager at an IT company to help him. They also asked if I knew anyone who could assist in any way or pull strings. I felt like nothing more than a tool to clean up my brother's mess, not their daughter. I was still in pain, both physically and mentally, and it was unbelievable that they would come to me for help after everything. It felt like a slap in the face. When I was lying in a hospital bed, after surgery, scared and alone, they didn't care. But now that their favorite child was in trouble, they suddenly needed me. Part of me felt guilty, like maybe I should help for the sake of the family, but another part of me was angry. This was the same brother who had always had everything handed to him. Why should I be the one to save him? My parents had always shielded him from consequences, and now they expected me to do the same. I told them I wouldn't help. I said that even if I had the money, I wouldn't feel obligated to give it to him. I made it clear who they cared about more, and reminded them that they hadn't even come to see me. They accused me of being selfish and insisted that families should stick together. I couldn't bring myself to care. Even when they said I would regret not helping my brother, it didn't change anything. He had always come first. I was never enough for them, no matter how hard I tried. Now they wanted me to forget all the times they ignored me, excluded me, and made me feel unimportant, just because they needed something from me. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had control, and I wasn't going to give that up. I'm lying in my hospital bed right now, feeling a mix of anger and guilt. Since I said no, my parents haven't spoken to me, and I know they're upset. But I can't bring myself to care anymore. I'm done trying to earn their approval. I've wasted too much time. Am I wrong for standing up to my parents, after everything they'd done to me, and for refusing to help my brother? They keep saying that families should always stay together, and it makes me feel like I might be the villain. But the way they have treated me my entire life, especially now, is something I can't ignore. I feel like I've reached my limit, but I don't know what to do next. First update. Hello everyone. I want to thank you for the support on my original post. First update. Hello everyone. I want to thank you for the support on my original post. It helped me stay firm in my decision. I didn't expect to update so soon, but a lot has happened since then. I was discharged from the hospital a few days after my parents' visit. I can walk, but my leg fracture requires me to use crutches, and breathing is still difficult, as my ribs continue to heal. I was looking forward to going home, finding some peace, and getting away from all the chaos. But the moment I stepped into my apartment, that hope disappeared. I knew things wouldn't go as smoothly as I wanted. As soon as I spotted my parents waiting outside my door, I knew something was wrong. They must have called the hospital to find out my exact discharge time because I hadn't told them. They didn't waste a second. Before I could even take my keys out, they started laying into me. They were furious, saying that by re-jurious, saying that by re-pressure, fusing to help my brother, I had gone too far. It was the angriest I had ever seen them. They seemed more upset with me for saying no than they were about my brother's fraud. They went on and on about how family should always come first. They called me selfish and vindictive, accusing me of using the situation to get back at them because of my resentment toward my brother. They didn't care that I was still recovering from a near-death experience just a week earlier. To them, I was simply an obstacle to saving their beloved son. They even had the audacity to say they expected me to step up now, that this was my chance to prove I wasn't a disappointment and could finally be part of the family. It was unbelievable. They were essentially admitting that I didn't matter to them, and that helping my brother was the only way I could redeem myself. Things escalated further when I told them, clearly and directly, that I wasn't going to do it. My mother broke down crying at my door, shouting things like, "We've already lost one child, and now we're going to lose two," and accusing me of punishing them for loving him more. My father, on the other hand, grew even angrier. He didn't try to guilt me, he tried to shame me. He repeatedly called me cold-hearted and selfish, saying I had no regard for the family, and that I would regret this once they were gone. Honestly, it took everything in me not to break down. I was being told I was a terrible person for refusing to fix my brother's mess. all while I was still exhausted from my hospital stay, and struggling to stand on crutches. The fact that my parents had always treated my brother better, and openly loved him more, only made everything worse. But I didn't back down. I told them I would call the police if they didn't leave, and that I wouldn't pay a single cent toward his bail or legal fees. Eventually, they left, but not before throwing more insults my way. A few days after that confrontation, my brother's case made headlines. It turned out the fraud was far more extensive than anyone initially believed. The police uncovered evidence that he had been transferring company funds for over a year, some of which had been laundered through fake business accounts in his name. As part of a wider investigation, they also discovered he had helped several colleagues hide their own embezzled funds. Now, in addition to fraud, he's facing charges of conspiracy and money laundering. If convicted, he could spend a long time in prison. The fallout has been severe. My parents are panicking, and my brother's reputation has been completely destroyed. After years of boasting about his achievements to everyone they knew, people aren't buying their attempts to downplay the situation as a misunderstanding that will somehow be resolved. When news spread that his son was involved in a major fraud case, my dad even lost an important client. They're scrambling, and it's obvious they don't know what to do. Naturally, they came back to me again. This time, they didn't even try to hide their desperation. They said they needed my help just this once to get through everything. Because they were under so much stress, they insisted that if I helped my brother, they would have a chance to fix things and keep the family together. But I knew exactly what that meant. Keeping the family together meant maintaining the image that their perfect son had done nothing wrong, and fixing things meant covering up his actions. After I refused again, they went completely silent. No calls, no messages, nothing. It seems like they've given up on me. Honestly, they probably see me as a lost cause, someone who abandoned the family when they needed her most. But the truth is, I don't care anymore. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm in control. Realizing that my parents only saw me as a backup plan, someone to clean up their mess, made everything clear. Being in control, even if it came from something going wrong, hurts. But at the same time, it feels incredible to finally put myself first and say no instead of constantly trying to please them. I will not help my brother, and I won't allow them to guilt me into fixing a situation they created. They will have to face the consequences of their own actions. Second update. Since many of you have been asking about how I'm doing, the truth is that things have become even more complicated. My brother sent me an email. Since he doesn't have access to a phone while in custody, he convinced a friend, who still believes he's innocent, to contact me on his behalf. At first, I was tempted to delete it without even reading it. I assumed it was just another attempt to manipulate me into helping him. But curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. In the email, my brother claimed he was being framed. While he insisted he wasn't the mastermind, he did admit that he was involved in the fraud at his company. He said that higher-ups used him as a scapegoat to cover their own wrongdoing. He even claimed that while he was stuck taking the blame, certain powerful executives were still free. He begged me to help, not for our parents, but because he believed I was the only one who could stop the family from completely falling apart. That line genuinely offended me. Maybe it was because for the first time he acknowledged how toxic our parents have been. He admitted they had consistently mistreated me and used him to boost their own egos. Hearing him say that felt strange, especially since he had always gone along with it. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was just saying whatever he thought would convince me to help. He repeated the same idea my parents had been pushing from the start, that I should help him to save the family, even though I had promised myself I was done with all of this. I kept wondering if there was any truth to what he was saying. Could he actually be getting set up? What if I was wrong about how big this situation really was? Part of me needed to know for sure. So, I decided to look into it. I spoke to a friend of mine, who is a lawyer, and someone I trust. Since they weren't involved in the case, they couldn't give me a full legal analysis, but they did point me in the direction of where I could find more information. After doing my own research, I realized my brother's claims weren't entirely false. There's no doubt he committed fraud, but from what I could gather, he wasn't the one in control. It appeared he wasn't the one in control. It appeared he wasn't the one person involved in the scheme. From what I found, several high-level executives had been moving company funds for years, and my brother had been used as a pawn. Because he was responsible for overseeing certain accounts, he was the one held fully accountable when everything came to light. Those executives had deliberately distanced themselves from the direct actions, leaving him to take the fall. Learning all of this left me conflicted. On one hand, I was angry that he had been involved in something so serious in the first place. Whether he was the mastermind or just a pawn, he still knowingly participated. He wasn't an innocent bystander. He made the choice, likely believing he would never get caught. At the same time, I couldn't help but feel some sympathy for him. Knowing he was manipulated by people with more power and experience in covering their tracks made it hard to ignore. It's clear those executives knew exactly what they were doing and ensured he would carry the blame if things went wrong. I also couldn't stop wondering how things might have been different if he hadn't been raised in a household that encouraged shortcuts. As long as success was maintained on the surface, he probably believed he was untouchable, because of our parents' constant protection and praise. When I told my parents what I had discovered, they were unusually quiet. Even though they refused to admit it, I think they knew deep down that my brother wasn't completely innocent. Still, they stuck to their narrative, continuing to call me selfish for not putting the family first and heartless for refusing to help him. Talking to them felt pointless, like arguing with a wall. They refused to accept reality. At this point, I've decided to cut off communication with them. My decision is final. No matter how much he blames the executives, my brother made his choices, and now he has to face the consequences. If my parents want to keep supporting him, that's on them. But if the roles were reversed, I know I wouldn't destroy myself trying to help someone who wouldn't do the same for me. Honestly, I haven't felt this at peace in a long time. At ease for the first time in a long while. Even if my family will never believe it, I know I made the right decision. I've been treated like I didn't matter for far too long. And I'm done with it. While my brother's situation is unfortunate, it isn't my responsibility to fix it. Once again, I want to thank everyone who has supported me throughout this. It hasn't been easy, but it's been a huge comfort knowing I'm not alone in feeling this way. Third update. I now have enough information to share another update, even though it's been over a month since my last post. I'll start with what my parents did. When they realized that insulting me and begging me wouldn't work, they chose a different approach, making my life even more difficult. They contacted several of my aunts, uncles, and cousins telling them how selfish and heartless I was for refusing to help my brother. They framed my decision as spiteful, making it seem like I was hoarding money and choosing not to help out of resentment. They called me a monster and said I couldn't be trusted. I only learned about this when one of my cousins reached out to me and told me my parents were spreading rumors. They conveniently left out the fact that they abandoned me in the hospital and hadn't contacted me at all, completely twisting the story to make it seem like I was acting out of bitterness. According to them, I had been asked to help my brother, and I simply refused. At first, it hurt. Even though I tried to defend myself, it felt like I was being punished all over again. I thought I would be left alone with no one on my side. But something unexpected happened. Instead of supporting my parents, several distant relatives began reaching out to me. It turns out my parents' behavior over the years, their treatment of others and their constant favoritism toward my brother, had already strained many relationships. I had no idea how deep it went. I started hearing stories from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, and honestly, each one was more shocking than the last. One aunt told me that my brother had once borrowed a large sum of money from her husband for a business venture. When it failed, my parents cut ties with her when she tried to recover the money, even spreading rumors that she was greedy and unsupportive. Another cousin told me about a family gathering where my brother caused a car accident in a parking lot but blamed the attendant to avoid embarrassment. My parents backed him up and made sure the truth didn't spread. When my uncle tried to confront them, they accused him of trying to ruin my brother's reputation. There were many more incidents like these. Times when my parents either covered for my brother or silenced anyone who tried to speak up. In one case, my brother had a business partnership with another relative, but my parents ended it because they didn't think the relative was prestigious enough to be associated with their son. Hearing all of this was both shocking and validating. I wasn't imagining things. My parents have a long history of ignoring others and hiding behind my brother. For years, I believed their treatment of me was somehow my fault, that I wasn't good enough or didn't meet their expectations. But now I understand it was never about me. They were always focused on protecting my brother at any cost, even distancing themselves from anyone who questioned them. For those wondering why my parents were so desperate for my help, the answer is simple. Despite their lack of support, I built a stable life for myself. I've formed strong relationships and managed my finances carefully. In my role as a project manager at a reputable IT company, I've saved money and made smart investments. My parents knew I had the means, which is why they were so desperate. What they failed to understand is that just because I could help didn't mean I wanted to, especially after being treated like an afterthought my entire life. There has also been an update in my brother's case. After I refused to bail him out, my parents managed to gather enough money through loans and favors to secure his release. However, the investigation continued. A few weeks ago, my brother decided to cooperate with authorities. From what I understand, he provided information about the higher-ups involved in the scheme, which helped move the case forward. Because of this, he received a lighter sentence. He will serve 1 year in prison followed by community service, instead of facing several years behind bars. To be honest, that doesn't make me feel any better. While his cooperation is something, it doesn't change the fact that he chose to be part of the scheme in the first place. I also on top believe this will truly change him. I doubt he'll stop relying on my parents to fix his problems anytime soon. As for me, I've decided to permanently cut off contact with my parents, something I probably should have done long ago. They're blocked on all my platforms, and I've even instructed the front desk of my building not to let them in if they show up unannounced. I'm done being their backup plan, their scapegoat, and their emotional target. Surprisingly, I'm not sad about it. I always thought walking away from my family would feel like a loss, but instead, it feels freeing. For the first time, I can live my life without constantly comparing myself to my brother, or chasing approval from people who were never willing to give it. The relatives who reached out to me have been amazing. They've shown me that I'm not alone, and for the first time in a long time, I feel supported. It's strange. After years of being excluded by my parents, I've unexpectedly found a sense of family. I'm actually looking forward to getting to know these relatives better. Many of them have invited me to family gatherings where my parents won't be present. One of my aunts even apologized for not recognizing what was happening sooner. She said she always felt something was wrong with how my parents treated me, but stayed quiet to avoid conflict. Now, she's become one of my biggest supporters, along with several others. For the first time, I feel hopeful. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm grateful for all the support and guidance I've received along the way. Reading your comments helped me realize I wasn't wrong for standing up for myself. It hasn't been easy, but it feels incredible to finally feel in control of my own life. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.